This is Charlie Kao with TravelMole Media Group in Barcelona at the Airline Travel Payment Summit. I'm with Nagarajan Rao, who's Senior VP at a company called Transpay. Good morning.
Morning.
So I was telling you, I'm anxious to learn about Transpay.
Absolutely, yeah. So Transpay is a cross-border payments platform which we've built systematically over the years, essentially building a cross-border connection around the world where money can be moved from point A to point B without relying on traditional wire transfers. I mean, that's the crux of what we do. Now, the way and why did we come to ATPS and how does it fit into the travel space? Essentially, if you look at any bank transfer around the world, what is happening is that your bank basically moves the money from their account through a chain of correspondent banks around the world, which may be their own or may not be their own, and then the money actually gets deposited into a beneficiary's account in a foreign country. Now this takes time, and actually there is also hidden fees involved within the process as well, which we don't see. And at the end of the day, the beneficiary gets the money after a few days, but if you're an emerging market or the developing markets of the world, it takes more than 7 days sometimes for you to receive your money. And then there's hidden fees, so you don't receive your full money. On the other hand, what Transpay has done is really created a direct connection to about 120 countries, allowing us direct deposit into local bank accounts of local recipients the same day or the next day in the local currency. So that's the fundamental difference between a traditional wire transfer and what Transpay does. And I'm giving you the example of wire transfer is really because that's who we differentiate ourselves from. There's a lot of other providers out there doing alternative payments, but doing what we do requires licenses, authorizations, a solid network, and requires a full suite of other sort of like support structures to actually perform this, seamlessly.
Let's get a bit deeper into that. Now, I've been doing wire transfers for donkey's age, as they would say. So now, because you have these licenses and things to facilitate direct electronic transfer overseas, you've eliminated a lot of the corresponding banks and things and associated costs. Let's deal with that for a moment before we get to the foreign currency part.
Sure. So in a typical wire transfer, the bank now hands over your let's call it money to a correspondent bank in a correspondent country. Now this could be, if you're sending money from the US to, let's say, Thailand, for example, the money would typically go into a European clearing network, which could be Barclays or anybody else, in Europe, and then from there it could get handed over to another Asian bank in Asia. It could be directly Thailand, or it could be one of correspondent banks which the Thai bank is connected to, and then ultimately the money reaches the Thai bank. Now the money is not reaching, actually the message is reaching. The money follows the message, and while this is happening, every correspondent bank has some sort of fee which gets taken out from the principal amount which is being sent. So you've paid a handsome fee. You pay about $25 to $30 to do a wire transfer from the US to go to Thailand. You don't know what the FX is going to be, because sometimes, especially for exotic currencies, FX is not available immediately, so the amounts might actually change before the money is actually sent or even deposited. And en route, you pay some sort of small fees because the money is touching different hands. And then by the time the money gets received, in this case the Thai bank might actually charge a receivable fee to the beneficiary who has received the money. So what we have seen in our experience is that anywhere between 10 to 20% of the actual cost of the actual value is deducted by the time the money reaches the account. Now, there are some differences in this. These charges are really actually, pretty visible and are actually levied in transactions which are of a lower value. So if you are moving small values of money, which is typically, less than $10,000 in many cases, you actually end up paying, fees in that percentage range. Large value transactions might have a different hidden fee in the terms of FX, which you might not be able to see because the FX conversion is maybe of a higher range. So these fees are then taken away from that FX rate. So fundamentally, that's how the money movement pricing, I guess, works.
And I gather your FX foreign currency part of this whole Transpay experience provides the best wholesale FX.
Correct.
Which typically, as a lot of people don't know, for the past decades, we all transfer foreign currency transactions, and there's been a 3-4% fee embedded in there.
Yeah.
On those exchange rates we see in the Wall Street Journal.
Correct. So FX is a very it's a very complex business in the first place. Secondly, as consumers, what you see online, what you see in the newspapers and stuff, is the FX rate, which is basically the published rate, what everybody can see. But when you actually go to transact that at that retail level of $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, the bank has its own structure. So anybody, it doesn't matter, it could be anybody who is now offering that sort of like FX. So essentially they take the published rate, which essentially could be the interbank rate or the mid-market rate, and they would build a markup on top of that and basically provide you the delivery of that foreign exchange to a foreign recipient in a foreign country. Now, the way this is done is typically large banks have foreign exchange desks, and they have rates for those currencies, and then depending on the amount you're sending, the bank would basically build or charge you the FX spread, which in many cases could range anywhere from 2.5% to sometimes even 7 to 10%, in the foreign exchange, depending on the country and the currency where the funds are going to. We have taken a different approach towards foreign exchange. We do our entire foreign exchange in-house. So we have our own treasury and trading desk, which has direct connectivity and feed into all the direct foreign currency and foreign exchange in the world where we are doing payments into. So we do not go to a central buying bank to buy a currency. We actually go to the local markets and we buy a currency directly from there, allowing a better rate, than many banks can offer. Secondly, also allowing more transparency in the rate. So in that way, it's a full end-to-end transparent solution to our customers.
It's sounding to me like instead of $30, $35 that a bank would typically charge for a wire transfer, we're talking under $10 and even less.
Correct.
Dollars, low level.
Correct.
Instead of, and that, I'll use the expression Wall Street Journal exchange rate, that depending on your yearly volume of transactions as a client of Transpay, that may even be below that.
Correct.
Effectively below that.
Yes.
But not above that.
Above that.
So that the savings, not talking about the time for the transaction, is the benefit of that Transpay offers.
Exactly, and I think, if I have to maybe summarize, I guess the real benefits really is we come into a space where today payments, wire transfers, international payments is a very fragmented space. People have built technologies on old legacy systems, which don't really work, especially in today's booming marketplace, travel, and other sort of like businesses and verticals. What we have done is that we've built a technology layer which is far more superior than many banks could have. We've built a network which many banks don't have, many banks don't have today. Probably, I don't even think any bank really has the kind of network that we have. And lastly, we've built a commercial model which is very, very cost-effective and friendly to businesses in the travel, in the marketplaces, and different types of customers who can now simply plug and play and use this, easily and reach out to markets which they probably they would never reach out to.
It's beginning to sound like me. You also hold online banking license.
So we don't have a banking license, but we are a well-regulated financial institution in the U.S. In the U.S., if you were to move money from the U.S. to a foreign destination, you need to be licensed by the states where you're doing business in, which is a money service business license. So we are licensed in almost all the states in the U.S. We are also licensed by the federal authority, which is FinCEN, and then simultaneously we're licensed in a similar fashion in Canada through FinTrack, which is their authority for financial regulation, and then there is another one called the FSA, which is in the UK, and then there is a passport license into the EU for the European Payments Directive, which we are also licensed under. We are authorized by various central banks around the world because all this business we do in emerging markets cannot be done just by connecting into one local bank. You need a lot of authorizations by central banks to do that, and we've done that. So in that way, it is allowing us to work with a lot more banks than anybody else. And lastly, before I finish, so we have one of the most coveted licenses in the world. We have a license by the Reserve Bank of India to do inward payments into India and then payments out of India as well, which allows us much more.
I was going to ask about India. Small and medium-sized companies, small in particular, can they avail themselves to Transpay services?
Yes. So today we have a solution where small businesses who have a certain number of payment needs can come, connect with us and interact with us, and we will evaluate their business needs, and then we will basically offer them a solution or a platform which they can now simply plug and play without really requiring to open up an account, without really having to pay any fees to open up that account, and essentially use the platform to send money to anybody in the world by just having their email address and phone number, and we actually deposit the funds into the bank account of the recipient in the foreign country.
Rao, thank you very much.
Thank you.